Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wa salatu wa salam ala rasulillah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. My dear brothers and my dear sisters, this is your brother Ibn Shaak, and this is the esteemed guest, Brother Arslan Hidayat. He's an Uyghur activist, and he has his own channel. Is it East Turkestan? Talk East Turkestan?
Yeah, Talk East Turkestan.
And today we're going to be touching on a lot of sensitive information. So inshallah, we're going to be talking about what's happening in East Turkestan, in China, and what's been going on recently, etc. So let's get into the nitty-gritty details, inshallah. Brother Arslan, could you first tell us, what is East Turkestan, where is East Turkestan, and why is East Turkestan important?
Well, East Turkestan, if we sort of talk about Turkestan as a whole, so Turkestan generally refers to your Central Asian nations. Typically, we think about Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, Kyrgyzstan, sort of the east part of Iran, Azerbaijan. So this geographical area is considered to be Turkestan. And so the very east of that is East Turkestan. And East Turkestan is referred to the nations that were created in 1933, which was the Islamic Republic of East Turkestan, in the south of East Turkestan, in the city of Kashgar. And then we have another nation established in 1944 in Gulja, which is the Republic of East Turkestan, and its Independence Days were recently. We commemorated them, and we commemorate it every year on the 12th of November. Yep. But before that, it was mainly known as geographical. What's happening now is, and most of the population that live in East Turkestan are the Uyghurs. So the Uyghurs, that's the question you should be asking. So who are the Uyghurs? So the Uyghurs are a Turkic group amongst other Turks. So Kazakhs are Turks, Uzbeks are Turks, Kyrgyz, the Turks themselves, the present-day Turkey Turks, Azaris, and so on. And we were the first Turkic group to establish civilization. We were the first Turkic group to accept Islam and spread Islam amongst the other Turkic groups. And so this happened in the early 10th century under Sultan Saad Burahan in 932, and then slowly through Dawah and Jihad, it spread all over. And then therefore, that was a sort of legacy that the Uyghurs left. And then when we get to about the 16th, 17th century, we have, many wars and many fights with the Chinese. So that's when it sort of starts during Manchu Empire, and this goes on for hundreds of years. And then we were also under Chinese nationalists, and the most recently from 1949 under Chinese communists, and they've been they've sort of occupied our land since then for the past 72 years. And we've been trying to get free. So the news that you hear about Uyghurs, that you've heard probably recently, I'm not sure about your experience with the Uyghurs or heard about them, brother, but it's been going on for 72 years, but we've only hit sort of the mainstream news media. You'll always hear about it because of the likeliness of the dhulm. You'll hear comparisons with what happened to the Jews 75 years ago. And so it's sad that it had to come to that for the world to for us to sort of get some recognition about what's been happening.
Yes, subhanAllah, like you said, it's only been surfacing recently, but before that, there weren't much news about the Uyghurs, etc. Brother, just to clarify on one point, how do you pronounce it? Is it Uyghurs or Uyghurs?
So the proper terminology, it's Uyghurs. So you got the Uy, and then the Ra, and the Ghurs. Like that's the Uyghur way of saying it. But the word Uyghur has been sort of anglified. So you'll always hear it in the news, like BBC. You'll never hear anyone on the BBC saying Uyghurs.
Okay. Yeah, because I've been corrected on it as well myself. I used to say Uyghur, but then a brother told me it's Uyghur, and I was like, okay. But just wanted to make sure it's the right
I
pronunciation.
mean, some people do get antsy about that, but whenever I'm talking to like an English audience, which 90% of the time I do, I just go with Uyghur. It just makes it,
Yeah.
there are words out there that sort of, for example, when you call someone Chinese, they're not called Chinese. You know what I mean? There's a proper word for a Chinese person in Chinese. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. So, subhanAllah, I made like a list of stuff to talk about. I think you covered pretty much most of
Well,
it.
I haven't really covered it. I've sort of gone through very general things. Yeah.
So what are the the Uyghurs? What are they mostly known for in tradition and culture?
So the Uyghurs were the first, again, to establish civilization, agriculture, music. You would have heard of the Silk Road, which is a major trade route that sort of links Europe to Asia. So that's where the Silk Road starts. People that are very smart, especially known for trade, and even under Chinese regime rule, like with the lack of
Brother, I think the audio's gone off. The audio, the sound on your side, I think it's come up. Just a little bit.
Yeah, mine.
Oh yeah, it's fine now. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry about that. Yeah, so carry on, brother.
Yeah. So yeah. So they're known for their trade, their music, various forms of what's the word, like clothing, and just in general sense, like what we say, very civilized people, sort of. And I'm not saying Turks were not civilized, but we were the first ones to sort of generally Turks and sort of that Mongol tradition, like very nomadic and leaving from one place. So it's sad that such a culture, very rich, has come to this stage. And unfortunately, what you'll see from the Chinese propaganda side is the very superficial sides of the culture. So to make it look like that there is no genocide, they'll have Uyghurs dancing and singing and very happy. And then you'll see certain religious aspects, because you know that Islam is totally banned. And when we say banned, we're not talking about, forgive me for my brothers and sisters in Europe, we're not talking about little hijab bans here and there. We're not talking about these little things like that. We're talking about proper, you can't even say salam, like salam alaikum. Oh, because the view of Islam is that it is a mental disease. Okay. And for China, your main god and the main deen you should be following is communism, and the leader of communism, which is currently Xi Jinping. So if you go against that, you are considered an enemy of the state. So what China tends to focus on are three levels or three categories of this disease, which is separatism, extremism, and terrorism. So separatism means you living your culture, speaking your language, living your religion, you are automatically trying to separate yourself from the rest of the state. You're not mixing in with us, right?
So does it mean basically just say the Chinese believe in one thing and you believe in another, therefore you're separating yourself from what the Chinese believe in?
Yeah.
How they view it.
Yeah, and then the very extreme form of that is wanting to be a separate state from China. And no one does that within China's borders anyway. It's people like me, we're on the outside. Generally, when Uyghurs get on the outside, then they call for an independent state. But there's no way you can sort of do that within China's borders, right? So I give an example. Some people are like, well, what's wrong with that? Or, or what's wrong with assimilation policy? The thing is, you're in Britain, I'm Australian, and, if I speak for myself, I try to follow the deen as much as possible, right? The Australian government doesn't force me to drink beer, because in Australian culture, it's normal, I'm sure it's the same in British culture, to have a beer at the pub, go to the beach, free mix. And, you know, my government doesn't tell, hey, Arslan, why aren't you drinking beer? That's it. You've got a disease. And we're going to, no, there are mosques. I can practice. I can have my beard. And the Australian government's not going to make me assimilate to an extent where I lose everything. So their form of assimilation is you have to give up everything, your language, the way you dress, the way you speak, the way you have a beard, everything. Inshallah, alhamdulillah, subhanallah, words like this, they're all banned, right? And even saying things like, for example, if you got a brother smoking, hey brother, you shouldn't do that. You know, it's not healthy for you, right? Then they'll go, why are you saying that? You're meant to say, oh, it's haram or it's makruh. You know, you're trying to bring it to that level. Even things like, what do we Muslims do? Eat with our right hand, right? Why are you eating with your right hand? Why don't you eat with your left hand? Like, you have to constantly prove yourself that there is no Islam in you. Now, I've had the chance.
Brother, your audio has gone off again. Just to stop you there.
Hello.
Oh, it's back on now. Yep.
Yeah. When I was talking to some concentration camp detainees, they were telling me that when at night or whenever they were lying down, they always had to show their hands. Hello?
Yeah.
Yeah. They always had to show their hands. Why? Because the guards thought that they were doing dhikr with their fingers. But what these idiots don't understand, that you could still do dhikr with the heart. You don't even have to say or do anything. They don't. But they were saying like, show us your fingers so that we know that you're not doing dhikr. You know, you're not doing tasbih, right? So they're very antsy and very scared of Islam for some reason, and they'll use sort of you'll see certain Chinese propaganda of showing attacks. Now, there have been attacks on people, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you link it to a religion. And even if those things were to happen, you don't go and round up all of the Muslims or majority of the Muslims and then put them into camps. There are seriously some people that you know, they were given passports, that they were given permission to go to Hajj, and when they came back, and then they arrested them and things like this. And so forget hijab, you will see images, and any of the brothers and sisters can find this, of women who were wearing long clothes, like dresses above, you know, longer than their knee, like further down, or
like a jobab, right? Yeah. Oh, your audio's gone up again, brother.
So the only exception to wearing long clothes would be in winter. Otherwise, in summer, you shouldn't be wearing long clothes. So obviously, Muslims around the world have their different fights, but sometimes we laugh, you know, at the things we go through in Europe or Australia. We should, you know, Islamophobia and all that. But it's clearly that if the Uyghurs were going through what we were going through in Europe, Australia, and America, we'd be saying, Alhamdulillah, this is Jannah, right? So,
I mean, like I did a comparison. Obviously, it can be a bit of a grey area, because when you compare one genocide to another, it sounds a bit wrong, isn't it? But I did anyway do a comparison between, okay, what's happening in Palestine, what's happening in Kashmir, what's happening in Yemen, and tried to compare. And I was like, subhanAllah, the one in China is the worst, because like the Palestinian Muslims can at least pray and say Assalamu alaikum. So is everyone else in all the other countries. Whereas in China, if you say Assalamu alaikum, like you said, they get persecuted straight away.
Yeah.
Right? So like.
Even in Philistine, for example, you know, when there is shuhada, when the people are martyred, they get their bodies back, and they are treated like martyrs. You know what I mean? They get a burial. But over there, you don't even get the body back. You don't even know. Like your family member could die in prison or concentration camp, and you'll find out a year or 2 years later. You don't even know what's going on. And then you've also got forced abortions. So the maximum children that a Uyghur family can have is 2. So the third child is automatically aborted if and when they find out. It doesn't matter how far long, 7, 8, 9 months, it doesn't matter. And so you've got millions and millions of babies dying each year. Then you've also got these forced marriages. So Uyghur women forced to marry Han Chinese men. And so, they'll eventually become Chinese, and they'll become, non-Muslims. And so you've got this as well. So you've got so many things to try and get rid of the Uyghurs and Islam altogether. And many policies like this, and it's been, documented in their own leaked documents that have come out of these strategies to get rid of the Uyghurs once and for all. But it's very strange the response, even or the lack of response by the Muslim world. Like literally, Andalus is happening all over again, and we're just like sitting idly by, which is very, very sad. But
yeah, I mean,
the
Ummah is asleep, and it takes like a bit of a loud roar to wake them up, a bit of a shake to wake them up, inshallah. So yeah, brother, I wanted to ask you, I did a bit of research, about, it's kind of correlated with this subject. I'm going to share you my screen if I can find the way to share it. If not, then I'll send you a link, inshallah, and you can have a look. Let's see. So if I do screen, sorry about that, brother. I wouldn't consider myself as a full techie person, but
that's
just can you see my whole screen? Yeah.
I can see your whole desktop.
Can you see the web browser, the website and stuff?
Yeah.
Okay, so I've been looking into like, as you know, I speak about music and I warn our ummah about music and stuff, and I looked into something very, very very nefarious. And I wanted to also just share with you like how, like, music can be used as a torture weapon. People could use it to torture prisoners, detainees, etc. And there's a few articles. There's one on The Guardian which confirms it about, the detainees in Guantanamo Bay. How, like CIA, for example, use it to break detainees, and there's like here describes torture methods of music. For example, they would play a particular song like heavy metal in like a loud frequency range for long amount of time, so that person then reacts in a distraught way. Would this possibly be happening in the camps as well? So I wanted to confirm this with you. Could this be happening in the camps to our brothers and sisters over there?
Yeah, based on the interviews that I've had with the detainees, and based on the testimony that I've seen from the ones I haven't been able to interview, this sort of torture method they have not mentioned this at all. The only sort of music that they would hear, but it wasn't necessarily used for torture, but for indoctrination, was what we call red songs or communist songs. So and
what is that exactly, if you don't mind?
So it'll be poems or hymns, essentially, praising the Communist Party. So without the Communist Party, there would be no new China. So in a lot of these songs, in their messages, there is a lot of kufr, for example, from an Islamic perspective. Like, without the Communist Party, we wouldn't be able to have our daily bread. Well, what is 5 daily prayers going to do for you? A lot of these phrases and
like seeding doubt, right?
No. It's not necessarily seeding doubt. It's not to, these indoctrination sessions are not to make you doubt Islam, because they don't come from a philosophical, that they don't make you think, hey, don't you, like, how can there be a God? It's not like you brothers, you have your debates at Hyde Park and they try to. No, it's not about convincing. It's, this is your God. Allah is not God. Muhammad, astaghfirullah, yani Muhammad is. What are you talking about? And it's just like, this is it. These are the facts. You follow it or you die. You follow or you get tortured. It's like that. It's not about convince. Before it was, there was like methods of convincing. Hey, how about, are you sure? But now it's like straight up. What, you cover yourself. Yalla, come. Like, that's it.
So it's like gone to the head how
Yeah.
tactics, right? So you either believe in this or you get tortured more and you get persecuted more if you don't believe that. For example, the leader of a CCP is your leader. Obviously, we don't believe in those kind of things. That's shirk. That's disbelief in Allah. And from what I've been observing so far and what I know so far, the leaders of CCP and the CCP itself is corrupt, and they're all they're all disbelievers anyway. Anyone who's a disbeliever, we know about this anyway, right?
Yeah.
So
and so if you see like interviews that there's a reporter that actually went and when he was interviewing the detainees, I mean, our population is like 99.9% Muslim. He interviewed most of a lot of them, and they're like, I'm not Muslim, I'm not Muslim, I'm not Muslim. Like, I'm not, like, straight away, it's like, I'm not, like, they were trying to not just say I'm not Muslim, but they were like trying to be very far away from it. Like, normally if someone says I'm not Muslim, I'm fulan, I'm this, but they were like I'm not Muslim, and then sort of mocking the deen as well, because it's not just they had to say that they're not Muslim, they had to be very upfront, they had to love, and it's like even in our deen, right? Even in our deen, some like the hukum that Allah gives, right? We don't just have to, as Muslims, we're not supposed to just take it. Oh, tamam, Allah said so. No, we're supposed to love Allah's judgment.
Yeah,
they've taken it to that level. It's not just you got to accept the Communist Party because you have to. You have to accept it and love that you accept it. You have to love that you're a communist. You have to love that you love Shi. Yeah.
So it's like they're trying to strip away everything that they literally believe in, everything that they hold to heart, and somehow trying to, like, because obviously they're not killing them, they still have them, don't they? So they're trying to convert them into atheists or communists or whatever it is that they're trying to do. So it's literally an attack on Muslims and Islam, isn't it?
Yeah, and with the part of killing, they're not killing them in a way like straight up, gunning them down.
Yeah.
People tend to die through the various torture methods, whether it be rape, whether it be, I mean, we heard of one detainee saying that she was, they put an electric baton into her, like a stick, into her private parts, sleep deprivation, food deprivation, and so through these methods, the human body can only take so much, and then they end up dying, or they end up on the organ harvesting trade. We've heard of, or you may have heard of such thing called halal organ harvesting.
I have heard of it. Supposedly from China, right?
Yeah. So the rich of the Middle East, Muslims, everyone needs organs, right? But they tend to opt for organs from Muslim people. And so China goes, well, we've got Muslims, and the first thing that a detainee goes through when they first get put into a camp, or just before, they go through a full health check, eyes, retina, swabs, full body x-rays, everything, organs, everything checked out. And there's a database made for them. And God knows the number, but the organs that these people get are from the Uyghur detainees. And what's crazy is you can find these clips all over YouTube of these hospitals advertising. Now, they don't say, obviously, halal organ harvesting, come get your Uyghur organs. But remember what I told you? I told you that mosques, they're there. Some of them are there. A lot of them destroyed, I believe, anywhere between 12 to 16,000 mosques.
We're gonna get into that, inshallah, in detail.
Destroyed or converted. However, in the east of China, in the main cities, you've got mosques within hospitals, and you've got halal canteens. Who are these canteens and who are these mosques for? It's for those customers going in to get their organs transplanted, and they're advertising this. And you see these doctors like fluent, they're Chinese, but fluent Arabic, fluent English, like suddenly. So
you're saying that they've destroyed mosques, but they've also built mosques inside hospitals, and they haven't destroyed those.
Mm-hmm.
And they have
but that's not in the Uyghur region. That's all the way in other Chinese. So these operations generally seem to take place on the eastern side of China, like your Beijing's, your Guangzhou's, like these main cities.
Yeah.
Because that's where those patients would go. Our region is generally not hard to get to, but it's not a main area of China. It's considered very exotic. You know, you'd have to, even if you were to go to Skyscanner now, you really have to make an effort to sort of get there. It takes you at least 40 hours, like transfers and waiting, and especially with quarantine now.
Yep. Yeah. So, like you mentioned before, about the mosques as well. Could you please give us a bit more information about what's going on with that? Because I've seen some videos, like surfing around on Instagram and sometimes on Twitter. Because Twitter, they have, for some strange reason, Twitter always comes out with these videos more than on Instagram. Like with the things that are going on in East Turkestan, for example. I saw like a few clips where it says on the titles that they changed the mosque into a bar or a nightclub. Is this true? Can you confirm this?
Yep. Yes. So I guess you could say those were some of, I don't know if you'd say the lucky mosques, because eventually you could say in 10, 20 years time, if for some reason we become free, we could convert that mosque back into a mosque from a bar. So we know that, I believe the number was around 25,000 mosques within the whole of East Turkestan. So a good third of that has been totally destroyed, and another third they've been converted. Whether it be they removed the domes and they removed the shahada or any sort of calligraphy, and they've sort of converted it, or they've turned some of them into sort of exhibition centers or art centers, and so and some of them into bars and places like this where you'll see people drinking, and so forget sort of mosques being converted into churches or something, proper bars, like
you know what happens in a bar, all sorts of madness, which is, to be honest, I find absolutely crazy, because how can they do this and get away with it? You know what I mean? How can they do this for so long and get away with it? SubhanAllah. But
the thing is, like, no one's holding them responsible. If you did that, say in the West, there'd be outrage, or the Muslims would have at least a right to protest. There'd be some hoorah. Whether or not there'd be any result from it is another thing, but you wouldn't be arrested for protesting against that. But in China, and I'm sure not just Uyghurs, but just your normal Chinese citizens, if they were to protest against any government policy. So, for example, let's just say the road wasn't built right properly. Forget political things. You protest against that. Oh, so you're not satisfied with the government? He'll take care of you. It's like people need to remember, China is not a free country. They haven't got any country that bans Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and or means to speak. That should be the first red line. Like, there's something going on here. And the mere fact that people can't go in and investigate, it is another issue. But for example, if there were to be any sort of discriminatory action in the West, Muslims have access to platforms where they could voice their concerns and they won't be retaliated on. And if they are, then there's support, and then you can go against it. You can go to court. Especially recently, we saw with Dr. Salman Butt.
The way he got called extremists, but then they took those words back. There was a whole court process that took place, which we obviously, we have that advantage, but in China, the Muslims there don't, unfortunately. So like you were saying, they don't have access to like these major platforms. Could you just elaborate a bit more on that so people can know, what's happening with that?
So China have their own intranet. They don't have the internet, they have the intranet. And so they have their own versions of Twitter, they have their own versions of Facebook, they have their own versions of Instagram and Google. And so there is major censorship. So if you were to write sensitive words like freedom for Uyghurs, East Turkestan, Tiananmen Square massacre, the CCP virus, COVID started in China, things like this, you will be censored. What's crazy is, we've got Google Maps. There is something in China called Beidou. Beidou is like the Google of China, and then they've got Beidou Maps. So what they did was, in Beidou, they actually censored, or they had white dots from the areas where the concentration camps are. And so what researchers did was, they went to Beidou Maps, they looked at the censored areas, and they got the geolocation of those areas. And they went back to Google Maps or Google Earth and found the concentration camps. So what's crazy is the censorship has sort of worked into, in this case, to our favor, into helping us find the concentration camps. And so any form of complaining, or so, for example, most recently, even with a Chinese person, you would have seen that Chinese tennis player, writing about how she was, essentially forced into sex by a major Chinese official. Her tweet, or whatever you want to call it, her posting was taken down. And then she was disappeared. She is still disappeared. But because of the world's pressure, they've had to come up with fake videos of her saying that she's okay and well. And so, or for example, we had some famous Uyghur people die, last year, and you will see in the post, they weren't allowed to write phrases like, may you be in Jannah or inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. They wrote things like, may you be in a better place, may you rest peacefully. Because if they write something like, may you be in Jannah or things like this, may Allah grant you the highest levels of Jannatul Firdaus, you're gone. So even that, like postings like that, commenting on anything, like straight away. And your whatever social media account you have has to be linked to your ID. So there is, how in the West we've got like random, like, you've got trolls and you don't know who these people are. And, no, you don't have that problem in China, because everyone, who's commenting, if you don't use your ID to link to your social media, you don't get a social media account.
SubhanAllah. So does that mean they could track you and find your location and basically know your home address, all your personal data, etc.?
Yeah. So because especially you would have seen with COVID, there were a bunch of citizen journalists posting things like, what was the reality of COVID? They found them in 5 minutes because everything was linked, to their ID. Even knives are linked. There is, forget, you could have your debate about whether guns are a good thing or not, but even normal like chopping knives to chop up your vegetables, they're all QR coded to your ID. Like that's how much they track you.
SubhanAllah.
Yeah.
That's a lot of limitations, restrictions to a group of people that live there. Just deeply thinking about it, reflecting on it, like they must hate Muslims so much to restrict them restrict their movements, restrict their way of life, their living. That they put all of this onto them, which is crazy.
It's not really, yeah, it is a hate for Islam, but it's more because it's different. It's not part of them, and they see that as a threat. And number two, because China says that there are around 56 different ethnic groups within China, most of them, except for, say, Uyghurs and Tibetans, have assimilated mostly. And the main holdup for not assimilating, I mean, again, to their definition of assimilation, like to totally give up everything, are the Uyghurs and Tibetans. And they see religion as a big part of that. So you'll also see not just, say, Islam banned, but Buddhism, Christianity, Judaism. So even their own sort of Buddhist sort of Taoism, you may have heard of the Falun Gong. So even sort of these Asian traditions, sort of Buddhist religions are also banned, or they are only allowed to be practiced as long as it goes through, as long as it's a Chinese version of that, as long as you are practicing a Chinese version of Islam.
You know what? I've heard something like, because you brought it up. I've heard and I've read it somewhere, and I'm just gonna find it now and share it with you, inshallah, on the screen. That the leader, I think it was the leader of the CCP, tried to rewrite the Quran and tried to rewrite the Bible into like a communist version. Have you heard of anything like that before?
Yeah. So with translations or interpretations, they'll try and change up the manner or the meaning of those. So, I mean, I've been to East Turkestan many times, and I've attended some khutbas. So what they'll do is they'll take the first part of a hadith or the last part of a hadith and sort of use that hadith and then rearrange it to say, or this means to be part of the broader society. This means to follow the law of the land and to abide by it. But then they don't read the rest of the hadith, or they'll interpret ayats in such a way that there's no way that the ayah could be interpreted in that sort of way. So they can't really change the Arabic of the Quran, but the translation. Besides, it's very difficult to learn Arabic, or let alone any language now, because of the restrictions. The only way you could was back in the day through underground mosques, or people had to learn in secrets. And even those people and the children of those people and the parents of those people are now locked up in the camps. So, people had to bury their Qur'ans or throw them in the river or hide them, in such a way. If they were found with, or especially today, if they're found with the religious text, that's it. You're going to a camp. So you won't see, sajjada or like prayer mats or ayat al-kursi on the wall. Anything religious, it is all banned.
SubhanAllah. That reminds me of the one of the ayahs in the Quran where it's a story of where people actually did do that in the time of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, where they had to bury their Quran to hide it from the munafiqs and mushrikeen, because they was afraid of being persecuted, etc. Inshallah, I'll reference that towards the end of the video.
Inshallah. I believe it was narrated by Abdullah ibn Abbas, where he said that towards the end of days, that even if you wanted to find a mushaf, you wouldn't be able to find it. So if you wanted to read Al-Quran, I'm sure it's a very popular saying or sort of narrated from him. And like that's the case now. You're not going to find Al-Quran, and the only sort of Qurans that there are is when China has visitors and they want to show, say, from Muslim countries or Muslim journalists that there is religion. That's when they'll take the Quran out of the storage and go, look, and they'll pop them into their hotel rooms, and they'll put prayer mats in their hotel rooms, saying, we've got and these Muslim journalists or Muslim delegates, they'll go home and they'll go, we don't even have Quran in our hotel rooms. These guys have Qurans in the hotel room. So unfortunately, that's why you see, a silence from Muslim countries, because they can be easily bought easily.
Yeah, that's 100% true, because if you look at what's going on in all the Muslim countries around the world with the oppression, not one single Muslim leader or supposedly Muslim leader has helped, because they're obviously the billionaires. They're the one who have all the financial means and resources. If they could, if they can, they would be able to help them, but they don't. Because perhaps, like you said, they may have been bought and sold out.
Yeah.
So let's move on. Because I like talking about like the culture, the tradition, things that people can remember about Uyghurs and Uyghurs. Could you perhaps list me 10 items of foods that come from the Uyghur culture that we could perhaps try ourselves, inshallah?
Yeah. So what I do is just literally. Are you in London?
I'm in Birmingham.
Birmingham. I'm not sure if there's a Uyghur restaurant there. I think there are some Uyghur restaurants in London. If you literally just type in Uyghur restaurant, and just go there, they should have a menu. But you can actually make your own. I mean, like I can cook. Like if I can make it, then you can as well. So
Inshallah.
popular dishes is what we call polo, which is like the king of the table, and you would see this like in Uzbekistan, in Afghanistan as well. So they'll call it like pilav, but polo is very popular. It's like braised rice dish with carrots and lamb.
Oh, okay, yep. That sounds very nice,
so
mashallah.
that's very popular. Then you've got like a handmade noodle dish with stir-fried vegetables, and that's called langman, Langman. Then you've got certain various pastries that are all like pastry, but with meat inside. So you have one called, one's called a gushnan, which is like a meat pie. It's sort of like a calzone or like a pizza, but with all the stuffing inside. And then you've got samsa as well, which is like mini, which is like a mini meat pie or like a sausage roll. So I urge anyone, especially if you're in London, I forget the names of the Uyghur restaurants now, just type in Uyghur restaurant and you should be able to see them. So the food is generally a mixture of, say, Asian and Central Asian and Middle Eastern type foods. Generally, a lot of the food you'd be able... What's your background, brother? Pakistani, yeah. So we have very like similar like biryani type, like spice-filled dishes. So a lot of the food it'd be very similar to Pakistani food as well. Generally, we eat the food with our hands. Various soups. We have one called suiqash, which is like cut up, cut up noodles into soup. And we've also got like wonton soup, but we call it chuchura, which is like wontons or dumplings in a soup. And lots of different food.
Jazaakumallahu khayr, Aki. Inshallah, I'll list that in the description so everyone can check it out, inshallah. So let's move on to the next thing. What can we do, now that we know about the history and the culture, the tradition, and what's going on in East Turkestan, who the Uyghurs are. What can we do as an individual to help them, to support them? Just say we're living in London or in Australia and we're not in China. What can we do to help?
Well, first of all, you want to, because when you say individual, who is this individual? If you just say a student, there are many projects that we were able to work with certain students where they were able to sort of, first of all, find out if the university had any links with China. Because what China tends to do is a lot of the technology or a lot of the medical technology that they have or surveillance technology that they have, they tend to sort of develop that in the West. So see if there are any contracts with you, with your university in China. And you can look this up in Google, where universities, because of student pressure, they ended up cutting up their contracts with Chinese firms. And many people think, well, it's just a Chinese company, Chinese firm, you know, they're just making money. No, no, no. In China, there are no private companies. Your company, no matter how private it is, you know, 50% of it has to be owned by the Chinese Communist Party. So it's not like a privately owned mom and dad, you know, they made it. No, it's not like that. You know, so you're directly working with the Chinese when you're working with a Chinese company, you're working directly with the Chinese Communist Party. Do that if you're like a student.
Yeah.
Petitions are a good thing as well. Simply raising awareness is a good thing as well. Social media is probably the easiest. Liking, sharing, hashtagging. So you'll see from time to time Twitter storms that are happening. So that's like bringing awareness. In London, I'm sure you've seen with the brothers at Islam 21C and the various now 40, 50 organizations on board. So watch out for any protests or rallies that are coming up. And alhamdulillah, like this is the only issue in the world right now where it's very safe for Muslims to attend. It's not sensitive like Palestine or Afghanistan or Iraq, where you know Muslims are labeled as terrorists automatically when they attend these protests. This one's like supported by, you'll be supported by the British government on this, yani. The more the merrier sort of thing, you know.
Yeah.
And so attend those rallies. And at the end of the day, like we're doing this for ourselves, you know. Our brothers in East Turkestan are being tested, but this is our test. Like, what are we doing? You know, like like doing our part. Like this is our jihad, this is our struggle. You know, this is what's permissible for us to do now. And so obviously, if you're someone with a lot more power, you know people like MPs or senators, or bring that concern to them. Gather 10, 20 people, do some lobbying if you have to. I don't know how the system works in the UK, but do some lobbying. And a lot of these MPs now they know, but there was, many probably don't know, if you're in the media, you're a journalist, write about this, link it to it. If you're doing a PhD, perhaps write about it. You may be writing about history or politics or Asian studies, link it, to what's happening there. I mean, there are many things you can do, creative things that you can do. If you want to help out the Uyghurs financially, unfortunately, the Uyghurs is probably the only area in the world where you cannot get the money to them in East Turkestan, because receiving money from abroad in itself is illegal. So, you can get your funds to Syria, Afghanistan, and it's quite easy to do, but for us, it's not.
So would donations be declined? Once you just say you send the money, the Chinese government get hold of it?
Not just that, you'd be putting that person over there at risk. There are no organizations on the ground, distributing the money, The best thing that you could do is donate to organizations where they're able to get the money to Uyghurs in Turkey. Now, in Turkey, we've got the largest sort of refugee numbers of Uyghurs, and you're able to get the money to those organizations or to the people directly in that way. But, East Turkestan itself it's impossible. And you'd be doing great harm if you were to try to the people there. So many things you could do, and I'm pretty sure there's others as well.
Yes, jazakallah khair, Aki. So are there any projects that you are currently working on that you would like to share or people to know about?
Not specifically. Our role in East Turkestan is like a sort of journalistic news, sort of raising awareness, trying to bring, especially you'll get, like you asked me, is it true that mosques are being turned into bars, like verifying information, because you'll get sort of crazy stories sometimes, and we sort of say, that's true, that's half true, that's not true. So we sort of play that role. And then we're also interviewing experts on the situation. So if you go to Talk East Turkestan, we interview the main experts. So there are experts in what happens in the camps. There are experts in, finding the camps. There are experts in Chinese politics and what goes on. And there are experts in China's influence in the Western media, Hollywood, NBA, things like that, in sport. And so we try to just get that information out there to a level like to the layman, because a lot of the information is sort of academic work. So we try to sort of sift it down so that people can understand, to make I don't want to use the word popular, but to make it more tangible and to palpable, to grasp, for people to grasp more. So
Yep.
for example, we have something called the Uyghur Tribunal. If someone's that really wants to know or do research, literally type in Uyghur Tribunal into YouTube. There are hours and hours of footage. The Uyghur Tribunal is a people's court where all the evidence has been given, which at the end of the day is trying to prove that the Chinese government is committing a genocide on the Uyghurs. And the final hukum, or the final verdict, will be given on December 9. And so we're looking forward to that. And so governments can use that. So in the future, if you wanted to approach your MP, you can use that verdict from that Uyghur Tribunal and say, look, based on the evidence that's been put forward, this is, at least on evidence, a genocide. Now it's for the government's conscience to act upon that. What are you going to do? Are you going to sit by? Are you going to wait 4 or 5 years? Just like what happened to the Jews after millions die, then you're going to step in? Or, are we going to step in right now?
Yeah, just true. All right, Jazakallah khair, Aki. Do you have any advice or words to say with those who are tuning in, watching the video? Any final words or anything like that?
Just first of all, make dua, obviously, for your brothers and sisters, and take part in the ibadah of stepping up for your brothers and sisters, because this is, at the end of the day, we do it for the sake of Allah. At the end of the day, some of the testimony I hear from former concentration camp detainees, when they see, especially a lot of the younger sisters, when they get tortured and they get raped and they come back into the cell and they're with the other sisters, they're like, this is us, we, not to say that they're blessed, but they're like, they're always thinking about the akhirah. They're just thinking about the reward that what they're going through. And in that sense, when we put things into perspective with the akhirah, then they're very blessed. But for us in the dunya, we have to save them as Muslims. We should be, as brothers. Unfortunately, you and I know what the remedy is for such a situation. But if we were to call for that, we'd be in big trouble.
Yeah.
But we're doing the most halal and permissible way now, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
So we're not able to do that, but our sisters in there are so strong. That's what, because they're pushing it, they're giving it to them every day. That's why this dhulm is going on. I always say China, the world fears China, but China fears the Uyghurs. Otherwise, what's the point of putting in the concentration camps if the Uyghurs have nothing to bring forward? We're constantly showing up regardless of the torture. They cannot get rid of La ilaha illallah that easy. They better, if they try, you're going to go against Allah in this manner, you see what happens. So,
Allah even says that anyone who, anyone who goes against the believers, He declares a war upon them. So they are going to be destroyed by Allah, inshallah.
Yeah. So the worry, sometimes even myself, I think about your brothers and sisters are being oppressed and worried about them. But at the same, we should be worried more about ourselves. We're living comfortably in the dunya, but akhirah, you think about the rewards that they're gaining. There is no salah over there, but it doesn't mean that they're going to be punished for not doing salah, because they're forced into not doing. So maybe that they're getting, and I'm inshallah, I'm quite sure that they're getting far more rewards than us, because at least in their hearts, they are still doing their salah, they are still doing their saum, they're still doing their dhikr, they're still doing their hajj in their hearts.
Without a doubt, brother. Yeah. Without a doubt. So I think we wrapped up for today. Yeah. Alhamdulillah. Jazakallahu khairan for giving me your time, brother. Inshallah, we can catch up again soon. But what are your social medias that you could share to the audience so they could, subscribe to your channel, check you out, inshallah?
Yeah, so on Twitter, it's @Arslan _ Hidayat. So ARSLAN _ HIDAYAT. On Instagram, it's just @Arslan Hidayat. And then you've got on Facebook and YouTube, @Talk East Turkestan. Yeah.
Okay, but Jazakallah, Kevin. I think that's it, my brothers and sisters. Please check us, Brother Arslan's channels, subscribe to him, follow his videos, like, share, raise the awareness, and and watch this video again so you can get a better understanding of what's going on, inshallah. And that's it for now. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.